On today's episode, we welcome on fisheries research scientist with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, Ryan Henry. So we sit down with Ryan and chat about some of his recent research projects, including the impacts of new technology on our fisheries, preserving potential record-breaking fish the right way, and more on today's episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by American Legacy Fishing and Outdoors. World-class fishing gear, unmatched personal service. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk Podcast. We have a great show for you today with Ryan, a really cool conversation that I think you guys will enjoy. But first, we have to give a big thank you to American Legacy Fishing. They're the folks that make this entire episode, this entire podcast possible. They have for years. We can't thank them enough for their support of Tackle Talk. Brian and gang over there are first class all the way, a family-owned business. Great folks over at American Legacy Fishing. Go check them out over at www.americanlegacyfishing.com. And as always, your discount code is TackleTalk5. All right, folks, on today's show, we get to step away from the gear side of things for a bit. We step away from the fishing industry and the fishing news side of things, and we get to take a look at some interesting research that's been done down in Florida as we sit down with fisheries research scientist with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, Ryan Henry. Now, we're going to talk about a couple things here today with Ryan. First, we start off with a recent study that Ryan conducted down in Florida, which was the study that originally caught my eye and led me to reach out to Ryan. And that study takes a look at a topic and a piece of equipment that has a tendency to be pretty controversial in the fishing world today, and that is obviously forward-facing sonar. And it really boils it down to one of the most basic questions we have as anglers. Is it or is it not having a negative effect on our fisheries? It's that simple. What is the effect on the fishery, and what are the measurable increases or decreases in fish caught and fish harvested? And when I came across this study, I thought it was really cool because of its simplicity and its common sense approach to how they gather data. This isn't like an 8D chess, way over your head. You can't understand what they're talking about, or you can't understand the data they're gathering. You don't need a master's degree in biology to understand the terminology in this study. It was clean, simple, and kind of eye-opening with what they found. So that was sort of my gateway to Ryan and his research. But then toward the end, we also touch on a few of the other projects that he's been a part of that I think you guys might find interesting as well. I know that I did. And again, I really enjoyed this conversation. It's always fun to chat with these type of folks. So with that, let's jump into our full conversation with fisheries research scientist with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, Ryan Henry. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are joined by Ryan Henry, fisheries research scientist with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Ryan, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to stop by Tackle Talk today.
Well, thank you for having me. Excited.
Well, awesome. This is, again, I appreciate you taking the time, and we are going to attempt, I think, today to approach a topic that has a lot of very passionate debate and banter, I think, on all sides that sort of surround it. But you've kind of taken this approach, and I think a lot of people in your field are starting to look at this from more of a scientific and research side of things. And you are specifically down in Florida, and you have done studies on the three-letter acronym that, is very controversial now in fishing, and it's FFS. It's forward-facing sonar, live sonar. So this is one of those episodes that came across because I was on my lunch break. I was reading research papers like I do sometimes, and I came across a study, or an abstract, I guess, for a study in the North American Journal of Fisheries Management, and it was titled Differences in Catch Rates of Black Crappie and Largemouth Bass Anglers Using Forward-Facing Sonar at Lake Talquin, Florida. And it hit me for two reasons. One, it was multi-species, which I think is a cool way to look at it. I think a lot of times these, kind of look at the lens of either bass or panfish or whatever, and you took the approach of both, which I thought was cool. You also looked at not just number and size of catches, but what I could get from the abstract was also the implications of the harvest numbers as well, which I thought was cool. So for starters, I guess, can you tell me just big picture the why of this study, like where this study came from and why you guys approached this the way you did and what you wanted to accomplish?
So the main reason that we kind of looked into this is that our law enforcement officers approached us, and also some concerned anglers they claimed that the FFS anglers were catching and harvesting crappie at a higher rate on Lake Talquin. And their major concern was that if it was true, that this could increase the overall harvest and could result in overfishing of specifically the crappie population. There wasn't as much concern about the bass fishery, but Lake Talquin is an extremely popular crappie fishery, very harvest oriented, unlike bass. So that was the main concern and why we kind of wanted to look into this and see if there was any truth to the claims that this was happening.
So how did you land on that particular lake then? You're down in Florida. There's a trillion lakes around you that could have been your subject for this research. Why Lake Talquin?
Lake Talquin is the lake that I run an annual angler survey on. So this is the one that we have. We have years of data on it. We have it really down to a good science of actually interviewing anglers, getting catch rates and things like that. So we have a long-standing data set for it.
So with that long-standing data set then, how much does that change year over year? Like you're able to look at probably decades of data. Does a fishery like that fluctuate a lot, or does it stay very, very stable even with different factors that could go in, like technology and people moving in and out and popularity of things changing?
Yeah, we see extreme variability in our effort, catch, all that sort of thing. Like just every year it's kind of up and down depending on weather is a big driver. Yeah, and effort is also a huge driver. If you're getting a lot of boats out there, there's a lot more fish being caught. So
you see pressure actually changing year to year a lot, or is there a trend where it's like over the years it's just kind of got steadily more and more pressure?
I think the only trend that we're seeing is our black crappie fishery seems to be going down in effort because it's mostly an older crowd that is fishing for crappie regularly. But as far as the bass fishery, it fluctuates year to year. And I think that might also be if they're keyed in on a good bite, people go out there more commonly. But I think there's several lakes in the Tallahassee area. So if there's a good bite on another lake, all the bass guys might be going there.
You see it kind of go through cycles where like Talquin is the hot lake for a while and then the crowd kind of moves, and it's sort of monkey see, monkey do a little bit too, where there is probably some data to it. There's also just human tendencies of, oh, I heard that Lake so-and-so is fishing well, and so everybody goes over there, catch rates increase at Lake so-and-so, and then it just becomes a revolving circle of these lakes around you.
Yeah, and the tournament cycle can also kind of drive that bass fishing effort as well, because it is a popular tournament lake, but there's certain years where there's more or less tournaments, things like that.
So for black crappie wise then, like what is a good size black crappie down by you? Like what's a typical keeper that you're seeing people keep? What's a good trophy? Because I'm assuming it's probably a little different than what I consider trophy crappie up here in Ohio.
Yeah, they grow a lot faster down here, and they die at a younger age too, so the growth rate is a lot faster. Lake Talquin has a minimum size limit of 10 inches for a crappie to keep it. So 10-inch crappie, which, I mean, that's a good crappie pretty much anywhere you go, but we see them up to 15 inches.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not unheard of to see a 15-inch crappie anywhere, but the number of them that we see is pretty good. So it's renowned as a quality crappie fishery throughout North America.
So you said that they die earlier or they die younger. What is your average lifespan or death age of a crappie down by you? Like, I have no idea on crappie. Is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 7 years?
So if I'm not mistaken, in the Midwest, they can live above 10 years old. And in Florida, like an 8-year-old crappie is pretty dang old.
So I guess with this particular study that we're going to talk about today, you did it over a specific period of time. I wanted to ask you about that. You did it looked like from February through June. Now, yes. I don't know a lot about Florida, obviously. I know you guys go through, just from talking with my parents and people that live down there, like there's high water times, low water times. It's obviously different seasons than we have up here in Ohio. Was there a reason or a method to the madness why you picked February through June to do the study?
So that's historically, I think since 2017, that creel has been designed around peak bass fishing season for us. So that's when the most of the bass fishing effort, and our creel was designed around a fishing regulation evaluation. So they changed the size limit for largemouth bass, and they wanted to do a 10-year evaluation on it.
Got it. So when you guys decided, all right, this is a study that we want to undertake, let's go out and capture the data. How did you go about collecting that data, and why did you choose to do it the way that you did?
So historically, for Lake Talcott, the angler survey, the creel, we would hire a temporary technician that would go out on a boat every few days, especially on weekends, and approach anglers by boat and ask them how long they've been fishing, what they've caught, what they've harvested, things like that. And also they would count boats and things to get an estimate of how many anglers were on there.
Do you see a lot of anglers when you approach them that don't want to partake or don't want to be bothered with it? Or do you guys have pretty good participation rates?
We have pretty good participation rates. I mean, we have a very limited number of refused interviews, and people aren't obligated to talk to us either. It's completely willing. But there's some people that don't appreciate it, but...
Well, that was where I was going. It's like you're trying to get as wide of a data set as possible with, this study. And, I've been guilty of this sometimes. I have turned down surveys sometimes because I've been locked in on something. And you're also trying to figure out, all right, if you're losing out on that information from that crowd, what is that crowd most likely to, would it impact your study at all? So like, is it, my brain goes like, all right, is it a bunch of grouchy old guys that don't want to participate? And then they're the guys that don't have forward facing. And then that would skew your study one way. Yeah. Or is it the young guys, that I've done it before where I've been really locked in or I've been on a bite, and those might be guys that are more likely to have forward facing and would have skewed your study one way or the other. So I didn't know if you were able to kind of profile people who are likely or not likely to participate.
We don't have much of a concern about it just because we have of very few refused interviews. That when you're talking about hundreds of interviews, a handful of them isn't really going to skew the data, especially with the standard error that we calculate out. It's very marginal.
Well, it's a good PSA for people out there too, because when I first started fishing, I would get approached for stuff like this, and I kind of thought they were just like weird people out there that were being nosy and were like
trying to steal your spot.
Exactly. And so you get really defensive. So like I was out there sometimes, and you'd have these people approach, and they're asking about what you caught that day and how long you've been out, and do you usually come to this cove and all kinds of stuff. And I've definitely been the party that's been like, dude, leave me alone. Like I work 70 hours a week. This is my one time to be out here. I'm on these fish. I'm positioned just right on this, drop off or whatever it is. I don't want to do your 15-minute survey, but it's a good PSA. It's like, this stuff is important. It's not people just out there, wasting your time or being nosy. It's like it goes to stuff like we'll talk about here in a second, where it's actual data that could help, inform policies down the road. It could inform fisheries management down the road. Like, take the 5 minutes and answer the survey.
Yeah, I mean it's very important, the data that we get from anglers. So we appreciate all the anglers that are patient with us and are willing to take usually 60 seconds to get the information that we need. And then we move on, and we try to approach anglers in the most respectful, least invasive way possible.
So for this particular study on the forward facing that you guys did, how many anglers total do you think you had in your data set?
Okay, so I have the number, not of total anglers, but I have the number of crappie guys, the number of bass guys, because those are the two things that we looked at as far as the forward facing, because sunfish anglers, bluegill anglers don't really use it as much. I think we like 4% of the bluegill fishermen that we talked to were using it. But for crappie, we interviewed 364 anglers, and 26% of them were using forward facing.
What about the bass side of things?
Bass side of things was 234.
Okay, so huge, a lot more than I would have assumed you would have had in that collection set. So obviously, when you have, what was it, 6 months, I think, almost to collect this type of stuff. Yeah, did you see differences in answers like at different times of that period? Like, if it was early in spring versus when it started to get a little warmer out, fish maybe start to move offshore and stuff like that. Did you see anything there? Was it pretty standard across the board?
Are you talking as far as the use of forward facing?
Yeah. So like rates? The number of guys that would say, yes, I'm using it today, or no, I'm not.
I didn't notice anything, but I didn't necessarily break it out by the only thing I broke out by time of year was the catch differences. And that's where we did see some differences based on what time of year it was.
Okay. So let's go there then. Let's go to like what the actual data showed, because this is where it gets really interesting. So all of these, hundreds of anglers you have interviewed, and you have the data on, all right, so roughly what, 1 in 5 is using forward facing, in some capacity, if you kind of want to average both of those out just for round numbers. What did you find in terms of catch rates of the people who were using it versus the people who weren't?
Yeah, so I have that data here. So starting with the black crappie, the only thing that we found that was statistically significant, the difference was the forward-facing guys catching black crappie that were under 10 inches. So they were immediately had to be thrown back because they were undersized. They caught more than the guys not using forward-facing sonar. And as far as, let me get the catch rate up here. All right, so for anglers using forward-facing sonar, it was 0.92 crappie caught per hour under the 10-inch range. And then for non-forward-facing guys, it was 0.5 fish per. Or so almost twice.
So your guys that are using the technology are twice as likely to catch shorts, basically, is what you guys were finding.
That's what we're finding with that year's data.
Interesting.
Yeah, but the catch rate differences for just overall crappie caught were also very different, but it wasn't found statistically significant because of the range of error that was calculated out. So there was just a lot more variability, which, I mean, if you're looking at the raw numbers, the forward-facing guys caught more black crappie overall, but there was such variability in error in their estimates, just due to certain guys catching a lot more, certain guys catching a lot less, that we really didn't see that significant difference. But as far as the raw data goes, we did notice a difference.
Because that is that's the magic bajillion-dollar question is, there's a lot of people out there that have thoughts on, whatever but people are trying to figure out, yes, obviously your catch rates are likely to go up if you're using this technology. It's a matter of how much. That's where I think the question everybody wants answered is, does it make you 5 times more likely to exacerbate that fishery or, overuse that resource that we have out there? Does it make you 2 times more likely? Is it about even? That's the question that I think people are trying to figure out is how much of an advantage does it give you? And total raw catch numbers at least start to put some sort of data to that.
And the answer to that question is we don't know, because this is 1 year of data on one body of water. So does it represent every lake in North America? No. And funny you should talk about that, because we did the same survey this year in 2025 asking about forward-facing use and things like that. And in 2024, we didn't notice any difference between the number of number of crappie harvested per hour for forward-facing guys versus the non-forward-facing guys. And in 2025, we did. So the next year, we did see that difference. So like I said, there's a lot of variability and just other factors that we might not even know about that are influencing these estimates.
And like anything else, you're dealing with live things that can adapt. So that's the other thing that I think people yes, it would maybe make sense if catch rates with forward facing were going down over your data over the years, because obviously fish are learning. They're figuring out, okay, yeah, there is, audible sort of pings or vibrations or something this is giving off. I'm, learning the areas where guys are more likely to use this, and we're going different areas. They're not totally stupid. They're gonna slowly start to learn and adapt and figure out, and it will become less effective. You would think over time would be, if you looked at a giant set of data across the entire country, you would assume that's the trajectory that the graph is going to go.
And we definitely saw some trends, just speaking to anglers, even the forward-facing guys, when there was a cold snap or just weird weather patterns, they would still struggle. I mean, it seemed to you see that big difference in catch or harvest when the fishing's really good. That's we also saw it with our largemouth bass. I can talk about that briefly, but the difference between catch rate for bass in 2024 for our forward facing guys was significantly higher than the non forward facing anglers, and they also caught more bass over 16 inches per hour than the non-forward facing guys. And then in 2025, we did the survey again. Granted, we had a lot less effort for largemouth bass guys in 2025, but we saw no difference in catch rate between the forward facing and the non-forward facing guys. Then that study isn't published. That's just data from from our annual report. But
what's interesting though is you're seeing a parallel between both species over the year. Like you're seeing,
a little bit.
There was, in 2024, it seems like with both species, there was at least a little bit of difference between forward-facing and non-forward-facing guys, where the forward-facing guys were having higher catch rates overall. And then I think you're saying in 2025, you're starting to see that dip a little bit in both species. We're a little bit like, it really wasn't. You're kind of seeing 50-50 a little bit there.
I think it just displays the variability in the estimates too, and it's just a data point. That's what we're kind of looking at. It's
one of the data points that would be interesting to me too is, do you have data on, was the percentage of people using the technology changing year to year? Like, were you seeing more people over the years as it becomes more widely available and accessible using forward facing, or?
So we only have 2 years that we've been asking the question, but I can tell you what it was this year compared to last year. That's pretty much it.
Which is still cool, because it would be interesting. I would assume the number of people using it went up from 2024 to 2025, but I could be wrong.
All right, so we talked to 168 bass anglers on Talquin in 2025, and the year prior it was 28% of the guys that we talked to were using it. This year it was 30%. Okay. So it went up a couple percent. Crappie guys, we talked to 409 crappie guys this year. The year prior, I think I said 26% were using it. This year was 39%.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Going up for the crappie guys, at least. And for the largemouth, it was a lot more similar, but it seemed like a lot more guys using FFS for crappie on Lake Talquin this year. Huh. So we'll see if that keeps on going up. And there's a couple other lakes throughout Florida that are looking at the same thing, that have seen similar trends with their crappie anglers.
So if we go to bass for a second, the bass data that you have, how many fish per hour were the non-forward facing guys catching, and how many fish per hour were the forward facing guys catching? Because I think that'll be interesting. That's the other thing that people are trying to figure out, and I'm sure that has policy ramifications down the road. Like, is that difference large enough to kind of set off the alarm of like, oh, okay, we probably need to look further into this? If you're catching half a fish an hour without it, and 3.5, 4, 5, 6 fish with it over a day, like that puts a pretty strain on your resource, I'm assuming.
So for bass in 2024, our estimate for forward-facing anglers were catching 1.32 bass per hour, and non-forward-facing guys 0.51 fish per hour. And there's some variability in those estimates, obviously. But.
So almost, what is that, 2.5 times as much, something like that? You're getting there. To you as a researcher, is that a big enough difference to be statistically important to you?
I think it is 1 year of data, and we need more years of data to really get an average to see if this wasn't just a 1 year fluke necessarily.
But as you guys were doing this research, obviously the point was, I think you had some people that were upset or just, complaining a little bit on, hey, this could be affecting the fishery. Is there a threshold where you do say as a researcher, all right, yes, you have a point, like that is too much, where maybe we need to start to look at if it's harvest, regulations, or if it's any other regulations where you're like, all right, that's statistically important enough, you might have a point, guy?
So the main thing that we were concerned about with overfishing is black crappie, like I said, because it's a harvest-oriented fishery. Largemouth, very few people are harvesting them based on our data. It's
also a fair point.
Very minimal harvest, so we don't really have too many concerns as far as overfishing for our bass population, just because so few people are keeping them. But the first thing that we did when we heard there were concerns about overfishing with FFS coming into play was we did a complete population evaluation on Lake Talquin for our black crappie. So we did a tagging study that anglers would catch a tagged fish, and it kind of represents the entire population with a kind of like a subsample.
Okay.
And then we did an age and growth study as well. So with those two research projects, we were actually able to determine if they are experiencing overfishing, completely independent from the Creel data angler survey.
What did you determine with that?
We didn't necessarily have any concern at the time. It seems like the population is completely healthy.
So there's a little bit of like anglers just like to complain when like things are changing and things are different and people, we're very much a stuck in our ways type of people sometimes. And when something new changes, or you feel like you're so protective of your resource and you're so protective of your home water and your spots and stuff like that. And sometimes it is nice just to have somebody that has some data to like look you in the eyes and be like, hey, I checked on it. It's like when you feel like you're sick or something, you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, hey, it's all right. It's just a cold. Like, you're okay. It's just that little reinforcement of like, I've put some numbers behind this. We did some looking into it and I think you're okay.
Yeah, and I never want to discount people's concerns either. Like if there is a legitimate concern about overfishing, the first thing we're going to do is really look into it. And yeah, the angler survey data doesn't necessarily get into if it's being overfished. It can just show you the trends over time that harvest is increasing and things like that. And that's when you really need to kind of get down to the real intense fisheries research to evaluate the fishery.
Yeah. So one of the big things I want to ask you, and I don't know, I'm assuming I can probably ask this in a way that you can answer it. I'll try my best. So at what point is it, because you work for the state of Florida and everything there, at what point is it the state's job managing the fisheries to step in with something like the subject of the study, which is forward-facing sonar? Like, if you guys are doing your research and you're compiling all of this data, is it to a means to an end where at some point you're basically just trying to figure out, is this something that we as the state need to regulate or not?
I mean, I can't speak on regulation of forward facing. I will say we monitor fish populations pretty closely that regardless of forward facing sonar use, we would see major changes to these fisheries. And then at that point, we would change regulations. Maybe lower the harvest, things like that. Just ways to conserve the fishery. When
you guys do that, when you put in like harvest regulations or something like that, how quickly can you see a fishery bounce back?
It depends on the life cycle of the fish. I mean, there's some fish that grow so fast. We have a striped bass fishery that we did a regulation change on, and it definitely impacted our hatchery production. That we were able to get our hands on more bigger fish because it was actually the slot was protecting those larger fish. So
okay,
definitely. But there's other regulations on different fisheries that it can take years to really take effect, especially on the saltwater side. But I won't even get into that. But
yeah. So when you guys got the results of this study back, like, do you think you achieved what you wanted when you set out? And then I guess my next question would be, when you have your researcher hat on, like, what does this spark in you to say, hey, this is the next thing I'd kind of like to look into, or where's like the next logical step to go?
The next logical step, we have implemented this kind of statewide. So in 2025, we added the FFS question to 24 creels across the state. So
cool.
So we're starting to get some really good data, and it's really showing us how different forward-facing use is across the state. Because I also have some data on that if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be
get
awesome.
Into that as well. But so 24 creels across the state. We asked all the anglers if they were using forward-facing while fishing that day. We talked to 6,692 crappie anglers, and the range of FFS use was 0 to 39% by water body. So there was different use per water body, 9% average forward-facing use. So compare that to 39% is that the big one there is Lake Talquin. So a lot of variability lake by lake. 11,901 bass anglers interviewed, and that forward-facing use ranged from 0 to 54% by water body. So there were some water bodies where nobody was using it, and then some water bodies where 50% of the anglers were using it, and that averaged out to 20% statewide.
Yeah, because I think that's probably like this is probably good, because you need a diverse number of fisheries to get an accurate representation of that, right? Because there are going to be fisheries that just don't set up well to use forward-facing sonar. There's too much vegetation. It's not deep enough. It's like all this kind of stuff. So that is definitely like you're starting to get into a wide enough data set where you have unique conditions where you can start to put together like, 0 to 54% is a crazy difference there. But if you start to look, would you say the average was
20% for bass, yeah.
So then you're starting to get back to like, yeah, that sort of 1 in 5 type deal is kind of what seems to be the norm. Have they done anything else on the creel surveys that would lend like any other data points to you other than the number of people using it? Like, are they doing what you were doing at Talquin, which is catch differences?
3 lakes total, including Talquin, have done it. So, and on those 3 lakes, Talquin included, and there was only for bass catch differences because there just wasn't a large enough amount of crappie guys that were on these 3 lakes. Other than Talquin, we did crappie again in 2025, and that's when we saw the harvest difference. But for all 3 lakes, there was no significant difference in catch for largemouth bass forward facing. And in 2025, Talquin included, which is interesting because the year prior there was that extreme difference. So, but our effort and our catch rate overall for Talquin this last year kind of tanked though, and it likely just due to it snowed in Florida.
Yeah, which is that'll send them into a funk. Yeah,
this winter. So I think that some weird weather patterns did play a role as well, and maybe forward facing does not lend you an advantage when that big of a curveball comes. Who knows?
And what's interesting is you're in Florida, obviously. So Florida has a lot of fisheries that set up fairly similar to like these numbers are going to be totally different if you go to Lake Lanier. Lanier is going to have a skyrocket of people using forward facing for suspended spotted bass and all kinds of stuff. So this is where you start to see that it's not an easy question to answer because there are so many variables. It's species, which you guys hit on. It's, it's number of different types of lakes. It's the way the lake sets up and depth and, target species, other species that are included too. Like some of these lakes around me, like you can't use it very well because there's too many trash fish. So there's too many catfish and carp and suckers and all that kind of stuff. So there's all of these things you have to take into consideration. You're trying to quantify the almost unquantifiable sometimes, which is a fun pursuit, I'm sure, for you as a researcher, because it's just the variables and data you can play with are almost like they don't end.
Yeah, interesting and frustrating.
Well,
both.
That too, yeah. Because you just want to, like, as a researcher, do you want just a solid, like, yes, here is what the data says and that's it? Or do you want some nuance to things?
I don't think that you can ever really have data and be like, this is how it is. It's just, it provides evidence towards a certain point. I mean, you never know for sure, really, because there's so much variability in science, and it's just the evidence points this direction. And that's my job as a researcher, to inform managers and decision makers. But it's interesting about lakes setting up differently for forward-facing use, because Lake Talquin is actually pretty unique for a lake in Florida because it's a lot deeper. It doesn't have nearly as much vegetation, especially submerged vegetation, as other lakes within Florida. And it's full of old logs and just submerged woody debris and things like that. Fish hang suspended on. So I just think it's a unique fishery for forward-facing compared to other places in Florida.
And you probably would start to see, if you really try and zoom out or zoom in, I guess, however you want to look at it on this, is like different parts of that lake, I'm sure, set up really well for forward facing versus others. So your survey results, wherever you are on the lake, you might be more or less likely to run into people using it or not using it too, which is why you have to make full circle around everything, and you have to hit every, flat and cove and whatever, like, because you have to there are going to be areas where, if you only interview people in this one super deep area, your results are going to skew heavier forward facing because it sets up better for it.
Yeah, you definitely need to get a wide kind of representation of the anglers and also different habitat and where people are fishing. So.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's cool. Well, I also want to ask you, I know I didn't preface this before, but I also saw another study that you were a part of that is a completely kind of left turn from this that I can't let you go without asking you about it, because I thought it was such a cool premise that I had never heard of before or thought of before. You were on a study that I saw about the potential changes that a state record fish could go through when it was like, okay, you catch this fish that you think might be a record. What you do with it next can have a huge impact in maybe the accuracy or inflation, deflation of the weight of that fish. Again, I know it is out of left field from what we were talking about, but I'm so interested because it is something that never crossed my mind and probably should have. Can you give me like a 30,000 foot view of that study? Because that was cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, we we just hear so often that the best way to preserve the weight of like a state record fish is to keep it alive. Like don't kill it or it'll lose weight. And we wanted to see if there was any actual evidence to support that. So we had different like a group of fish and then different treatment methods for them. We did an ice bath. We froze the fish, and some of them we would put them on ice in a cooler overnight, and then other ones we kept alive in like a cattle tank. And what we saw is the best way to preserve weight was actually killing the fish and putting it on ice. And that was how it retained its weight. It didn't change weight. And then we saw some pretty crazy stuff with keeping them alive, especially with the bigger species. So we did it on black crappie, largemouth bass, and bluegill, and then flathead catfish. And with the flathead catfish, obviously large fish, they lost a crazy amount of weight.
If you kept it alive?
Yeah, because they would regurgitate things and they're just stressed out. And it could be, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was at least like a half-pound difference.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, when you're talking record books, like that is a huge difference. You're talking things that are separated by fractions of ounces sometimes. Yeah.
And we saw that with every single treatment as far as keeping them alive. Like they pretty much lost weight consistently if you kept them alive.
So like, I guess if you want the most accurate weight of your fish, you catch a fish, you think you have a potential state record. Again, not the best for the fish, but the best for your actual record is like kill that fish. You're talking like immediately. You're talking like bonk, put it out, neutralize it, and then put it on ice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's not great, especially if you don't want to kill a fish of a lifetime. But I mean, the odds are that you're catching a fish that is at the end of its life.
Right.
And if you release it, who knows how much longer it would survive. And a lot of the time, those very old fish aren't the most fecund individuals.
Right.
They start kind of declining in their reproductive output. But yeah, I mean, that's what we have found, that the best way to retain weight is just putting it on ice. And then,
That's so interesting. I hope I never think I have one and then bonk it and take it in. It's like, actually, you're 2 ounces short. We're like, whoops.
There was a record, a triple tail. I don't know if you're familiar with triple tail in the Gulf, but there was one that was huge. I thought it was like 40 pounds or something like that. Caught a few years back, and I think it would have been the record, but they kept it alive, and it lost weight.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I guess I've never thought. I've always been under the school of thought of like, all right, keep it in the live well, keep it. I assume in a panic mode, I would keep it in the boat the best I could, keep it in the live well, call resource officer or something to get him down there. And it's like by that time, I mean, that could be hours. That could be the enough time, like you said, even if it's not just. Because I don't think you were even just seeing them physically regurgitating like bait fish where you'd be like, oh, yeah, obviously, okay, that's going to lose some ounces there. You're just talking stress and being held captive for so long could do something there.
Yeah, they lose significant amounts of weight when they're under stress in a short period of time. And we did it over a 48-hour period.
Did you see any species that were like more likely or less? Obviously, yes, if you have a heavier fish like a catfish, you're going to notice the change more. But proportionally, did you think they were all about the same in terms of their tendency to lose weight?
It's been so long since I've really looked at the paper, but I believe that the percent change in weight was relatively consistent. But with the big fish, that bigger chunk, I mean,
it wasn't like, crappie were the one that like lose, 12% of its body weight over 48 hours.
I think that maybe crappie, because they're smaller and less stressed in a confined space. If I remember correctly, I mean, I don't think it was. I mean, we were able to conclude that fish pretty much lost weight in every group that we kept alive.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, we've all sort of seen that a little bit in tournament settings, but I've never put two and two together that there's a way to prevent that. I guess if you have a state record or like a fish of a lifetime trophy situation, is like, you neutralize it, keep it on ice, take it somewhere. Most places, so they will still accept everything completely normal, even if, like, is there a time limit that you have to get that fish somewhere in time, or can you freeze it, keep it in your freezer for a week and then go get it weighed?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
This is good stuff. If anybody's out there and you catch the fish of a lifetime state record, like, remember we told you if you get it by an ounce here.
and I don't know the policy state by state, but with Florida, I don't think there's necessarily a time limit that you would need to have it. Because if you catch it on a weekend, biologists aren't working weekends, and typically we're hanging out with family and doing other things, so we can't
come look at your fish right now. Sorry, dude.
Not necessarily.
Okay, so last thing I want to ask you is, obviously, you're still currently working for the state of Florida, and you have stuff probably going on right now. Is there anything really exciting that you guys have on the horizon that you're looking at, that you're, like, as a researcher, very excited to dig into?
Yeah, I mean, other than the forward-facing stuff, one thing that I will say that we're kind of looking into with the forward-facing stuff is there's, like, the theory that skill level plays a huge role in these catch rate differences, that the anglers that are most experienced, spend the most time on the water every year, are the ones that are more likely to use forward-facing. So that is also skewing these catch rates. So I kind of tried digging into that a little bit in 2025 this year, just by asking anglers how many days they spent on the water per year and starting to try to parse it out that way. Ran into a little bit too much variability and error just because of a low sample size, because it was only a couple hundred anglers, but I want to kind of build on that and see if there's anything there that we can really dig into that theory and find out about that.
Well, that's an interesting point too, I guess. When I first started using that technology, I was less efficient with it than I would have been if I didn't take it with me that day and I was just fishing off instinct. So you're getting that sometimes too, right? If you're someone that, how much experience do you have with this? Is this your third week with it, or is it your third year with it? Because you're going to be way more efficient.
Yeah, we talked to guys that, like, are you using forward facing today? They're like, yeah, but I don't really know how to use it.
Yeah.
So I mean, is it really helping at that point, or is it hurting your catch rate at that point? Because you're sitting there trying to figure out this technology where you just be better off throwing out your regular method. As far as other research goes, one thing that our office is really focused on is we've had some major fish kills from hurricanes in the past few years. A hurricane rolls through 200 mile per hour winds and can decimate a fishery that we found it. We've seen populations go to essentially zero, and then our job is kind of restoring that population through stocking. So shoal bass is a big one that our population declined about 91% after a hurricane, and we were able to go out there and get some brooders to send to the hatchery, and then we ended up stocking 3,000 one year and like 7,000 the next, and we were able to really contribute to that population recovering.
That's interesting too. So because the hurricane is not picking up the fish and tossing them away, is it the damage that it does to their fishery and their ecosystem and all of that causes the fish kill?
It causes major oxygen decline that the fish can't breathe anymore, because there's so much organic matter going into the river systems is where we're seeing this, especially in those river systems. We have documented major crashes in oxygen for an extended period of time, and some of these more abundant populations like largemouth bass, bluegill, they can bounce back because they're able to find some refuge. But our shoal bass population before the hurricane hit was under 2,000 fish total in this one river. So it's a very small, unique, rare fishery. And yeah, it went down to a couple, like 100.
Oh my gosh.
Or so. I mean, that's at one point, I think that we estimated that it was probably about 100 fish, and then went back up to about 1,000. So we're starting to recover quite a bit.
What you can take that data and you can, at some point you will probably get to a point where you say, hey, if a hurricane that we know is about to hit is a week away, is there anything that you can do with that data to try and protect those fisheries proactively?
I think when a hurricane's rolling in, the last thing that Floridians are worried about is protecting the fish. But
the shoal bass, my house. No, the shoal bass.
But the big thing is something called disaster mitigation. I like to talk about, where you kind of have a plan in place that you know how to raise these fish in captivity if their population ever gets severely depleted. So we've experimented with that where, now we have a protocol in place for shoal bass. If the population ever takes a major hit again, we know how to raise them and make babies from them. Suwannee bass is one that we're also dealing with, that we saw a huge depletion. I mean, that was 100%. There was one fishery that we could not find a Suwannee bass in anymore. So yeah, and we did some.
So you're trying to just shorten the bounce back period of these fish. Yeah. And most of the time you're saying that is like strategic stocking. So when you're stocking things like that, does it have to be a certain size stocker fish to actually take in there? Because we see this sometimes here with me locally, is like there will be, sometimes the ODNR or someone will say, hey, we dumped 50,000 hybrids into the river by you. And you're like, all right, well, 48,850 of those became smallmouth food within, 4 hours of dumping them. And then 5 years later, we're still not catching these fish because I'm assuming they were too small at that point. What size are you stocking to see them actually stay?
For shoal bass, I think that it was around an inch or two. So they weren't very big.
Okay.
And we actually had decent survival, and we looked at each year class that year. There was some wild reproduction too. I think that we contributed about 60% of that, like 2022 year class was stocked fick.
Wow.
So 60% contribution. I think
that's a crazy survival rate. That's awesome.
I mean, it's not nearly as many as we put in, but when there's not much reproduction, it definitely makes a difference.
This is the cool stuff. This is all of these things that just, we as anglers, I think sometimes take for granted. So like if you are down there and you're fishing for shoal bass, you just assume this is the way the, gods have made it forever. It's like, yeah, I mean, at some point they are resilient and they will probably bounce back or survival of the fittest or whatever. But we have people like you guys that are taking a data and an analytical approach to this and saying, all right, well, your tax dollars and your everything are going to help these fish survive and make sure that these resources stay as good as they can be. And I think that's pretty cool. It's something that I think we don't appreciate enough sometimes.
Yeah, and it's these small fisheries like shoal bass, Suwannee bass, and we also have a population of yellow perch that kind of took it on the chin from a hurricane. Those are the small populations seems to be the ones that we can make the biggest difference on and have them bounce back quicker and be like, we contributed to that. And it's rare from a fishery standpoint to really be able to say like that you made a difference in fishing, angling success and things like that. I mean, I've caught plenty of shoal bass that we were the ones to stock.
A cool full circle moment.
Yeah, and we can find that out through fin clips genetically, because when the parents that we had in the hatchery, we took genetics from them, and we can actually trace it back to see that those two fish were the parent of this fish.
Oh, that's so cool. So it's not like you're not doing like acoustic transmitter type stuff. This is just more DNA and
and that's kind of the direction things are moving as far as genetics have improved. So that's kind of our method for stocking evaluation now. And we've done that for bass on Lake Talquin. When we're stocking hundreds of thousands of them, we're actually able to use genetic fin clips to evaluate that.
Will that only tell you direct parents, or will it give you like a multiple generations of reproduction of that fish?
I honestly am not a genetic expert.
Okay, cool. I just didn't know how this is two generations from what I stocked.
Yeah, it'll tell you basically if the fish were produced from the fish that you kept in the hatchery. So that's how we're determining it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, the full circle moment of being like, yes, I know that this fish is here because of efforts that we had, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it is. It's got to be a cool feeling.
And that's with you probably see this with hybrid fisheries, that those fish are 100% stocked. There's no natural production of them. So those are the fisheries we have that with striped bass as well, where there's very limited reproduction. So it's basically an every year stocking, and you're out there catching fish and be like, I put you here.
Yep. Yeah, we have up in Ohio, sawguy is a big deal, which is half sauger, half walleye, and they're a fairly sterile fish. So it's like almost every fish that you have is a stocked fish, and it's super special when you can get back to, because they're also stocked to harvest. They're a table fare fish, so they're bred to be kept and
they can't reproduce. So I mean, other than creating a trophy fishery, there's really no purpose for them other than to harvest.
Which is what's really cool. Like for us, we will find these areas where these fish don't get pestered as much, and you'll find these dinosaur, I don't know how old they are, but it would be like we've caught 27, 28, 29-inch saugeye before that. That fish has just, the only reason it's alive is because it was lucky enough not to get caught in the lake that it was, stocked in, and then it fell through the dam, and now it's in a river system in an area that's too hard to get to, that, people are never going to pester that fish. And it's like super cool to see some of that too, to know, gosh, how long ago were you stocked in a lake 30, 40 miles away that you've survived this long? I don't know the lifespan of those fish, but when you get those trophy fish that you stock too, you're like, that's super cool.
Have you read about fish aging and how it's done at all?
No.
So
is that the otolith? Otolith. Okay. I knew I've read the word before. Yeah.
The ear bones where you have to kill the fish to get them, but you basically crack their head open and there's two little bones that basically have rings like a tree that you just count. So it's very, very interesting. It's you start getting fish that are 20, 30 years old for certain species, and it's very cool.
Yeah. What's like some of the oldest fish that you've dated or you've seen down by you?
I mean, with freshwater, there's not many old fish other than catfish. I think catfish we see up to 20 some years old. But I haven't really aged catfish since I got down here, but from past stuff, I believe that they get that old. But so on the saltwater side, I mean, red snapper and things like that can get really old.
Yeah, I feel like we're mostly smallmouth, river smallmouth around here, and lake largemouth. And I don't know for sure, but I would guess 10, 12 years is probably about normal, would be my guess, like for an old fish. But yeah, there's always like the Facebook post that float around that's like, don't kill that 18-inch smallmouth. Did you know it takes 10 years for that fish to grow to 18 inches? And you're like, I don't know how accurate those are, but I know, once you get to a 18, 19, 20-inch fish around here, like I know it's pretty darn old.
Yeah. I mean, there's some species that take forever to grow. I mean, even within Florida, there's some fish that takes them 8 years to get to 15 inches or something like that. Just depends.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate you taking some time to chat with us today on all of these research projects that you're doing. It's super cool. Again, I love these type of episodes because it's just a chance to kind of sit down and, we approach a lot of stuff, right or wrong. I think sometimes, especially bass fishing, which is mostly what we do, it's a lot of you take what the pro says for what it is, and you listen to the marketing of the bait company, and that's like where people are being informed. And it's like, at some point you should probably look at this type of stuff too, because you're going to be a lot more informed on actual biology, actual science. And you can take some of this stuff and you can use it out on the water. Like, I mean, it's actually applicable when you think about a lot of the stuff that you guys are doing. And then the trickle-down effects of, it could be, yes, your favorite fishery is your favorite fishery because someone is behind the scenes managing that and making sure that that resource stays as good as it possibly can be. The regulations that get put in place down the road are because you took the time to take 5 minutes and answer your survey out on the water. Like, all this stuff has trickle-down effects to us as anglers that we should appreciate sometimes. Before I let you go then, is there anywhere that if folks are interested in keeping up with you or the research that you're doing or anything down in Florida that's going on, where would you direct folks for like more information?
I mean, as far as my research, I post all my things on ResearchGate is the name of
that's
the website.
That's where I found it at. Yeah.
Oh, really? You found it on ResearchGate? I mean, that's pretty much the only thing that I really post my research on. So if anyone's interested in looking at other things that I've researched, I have a paper on the shoal bass and hurricane stuff on there too.
That's cool. And then the other thing too, if people are on there, like I run into this sometimes where there will be certain things you can see the full study on, and there will be certain things you can just kind of see the abstract on. Yeah. Do you get people that see an abstract of your paper or whatever and want to read the whole thing, or is that something that you're not able to distribute? If so, how do people request like full studies of things?
I mean, through email or through ResearchGate, you can request it.
Okay.
There's licensing stuff, and each publisher can be different as far as what you're allowed to do. Usually you're allowed to like personally on an individual basis, like share it with friends and colleagues and stuff.
Okay.
Like that.
You just can't mass post it out.
You can't go on social
without
media
asking for it first.
And I can't put it on ResearchGate for, I think, even this paper.
Yeah, because all I saw, but the lucky part is from abstracts and from what you can read, you can usually get a good enough gist of what went on for us as like your weekend warrior angler. At the end of the day, like what you need is probably going to be in your abstract.
Yeah, and honestly, you get into the meat of the paper, and if you're not a scientist, sometimes they can get a little bit lost in the data.
I've done that sometimes where I've requested one and I've got it and be like, this might as well be in Mandarin. Like I have no idea what this is trying to say. I should have just stuck with the abstract.
And I have that with certain topics too. You give me a genetics paper and that kind of goes over my head as well. So.
Well, great. Everybody, thank you so much, Ryan. That is Ryan Henry, fisheries research scientist with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Ryan, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, that is our episode today. A big thank you to Ryan for stopping by and chatting with us. I enjoyed that one. I hope you guys learned something with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms. Leave us a review if you can. Keep up with us on the web, tackletalkpodcast.com, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You guys know the whole deal. And we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.